Hello, hello. I don't know if we are live, but I believe we might be. Hello and welcome. My name is EdaSalad. I am Twitch's resident plus-sized vegan drag queen. I'm a proud member of Team Stream Queens, and I'm so excited to have you all here. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Road to the Big Leagues LGBTQAI plus in esports. We have a fantastic group of people. I'd love for you to meet them all. So I want to start off very generally. I'd love for all of you to introduce yourselves to me. Give me your name, your pronouns, and describe your lovely accolades in esports, if you would please.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ricky Ortiz, and I am a professional esports fighting game player. And I play for the team Evo Geniuses, and I've won countless tournaments from around 2005 to today's current date. I'd say like a few hundred tournaments over time, and I got second at Evolution, the biggest Street Fighter fighting game tournament in the world, 7 times, and I got second at Capcom Cup recently in 2016.
Nice. Nice. Stress?
Hi, I'm Stress, or day-to-day go by the name James. I'm an esports commentator. I've worked a lot in League of Legends and a few other titles. I use he/him pronouns. I'm a gay man living in Berlin. Currently, I work for a Canadian company called Overactive Media. We are basically the owners of teams across all of esports, Toronto Defiant, Mad Lions in Europe for League of Legends and CSGO. And I guess my biggest accolade is I was on the broadcast team for the 15 and 16 World Championships for Riot Games.
Fantastic. That's so exciting. All right, Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ann Heineman. I'm the CEO, CTO of a video game company called Old School. My claim to fame is I'm the very first esports champion, winning the Atari 2600 National Space Invaders Tournament in November of 1980. From there, I went on to win a lot of other small regional contests and so forth, because that was when esports was just starting. And then, of course, it went into obscurity after the great video game crash of '83.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being here. And Sheen?
Hi everyone, I'm Sheen Tacos. I go by Bagel or Bagul on Twitch. I am working for TSM as the content producer of a team of 4, so I have my hands in literally all TSM content since I've been hired. Before that, I used to work for NASAF, which is in a Scholastic Esports Federation, and my pronouns are she and her.
Oh, fantastic. So, excuse me, I do want to take this opportunity, and I know that I've spoken to all of you about this before, but I do want to just give kind of an overview of what this panel will be for the lovely people that are watching in the audience. So whenever I go to a convention, so I'm Texas based, I go to PAX South almost every year, but of course this year we can't. But every single convention that I go to, I always hit up the esports panel, and I go to the esports, like if there's ever like a tournament or something, I love going to them. And there's something just very exciting about it. There's something captivating about esports, and I don't know why. I'm not a big sports person, but I do really enjoy the competitive aspect of gaming. The problem is that within these panels, they don't discuss anything other than on the surface sort of issues about esports, like the growth of esports, or maybe how you get started in the esports industry, but they never talk about the diversity within esports, or in a great many cases the lack of diversity within esports, or real issues that I think surround it. So I really want this panel to be a really great roundtable discussion on your experiences within esports from all aspects. What I love about this panel, and every single one of these people brings something incredibly different to the table. And I cannot wait to hear your perspectives on literally everything that we're talking about. So thank you all so much for being here. Honestly, this means so much to me, because this is something that I have been wanting to do for years. And Deer finally gave me the opportunity. So thank you all so much.
Of course, happy to be here.
Yes,
Same.
I'm so
Very
excited.
happy to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Of course. All right, so I want to start the conversation with the sort of initial proclamation that we all have made. So we all, at some point, came out of the closet. All like, at some point we did, and I think this is a good place to start with this. With when we sort of talk about queer topics in esports, because I think coming out is a really big issue that a lot of people haven't yet faced. So I'd like to hear from all of you your perspectives on how it was just originally coming out, like to your friends and family, and then how that maybe differed to coming out to a larger audience. You are all public figures. You are all in the public sphere in one way or another. I'm curious about the sort of the difference or how you approached coming out to strangers and people that you've never met. Anyone stressed you want to start?
Sure, I don't mind. I think for me, it's something that I've over the last few years had to work through internally, and I'm going to start sounding negative, but I promise you I'm in a good place with it.
No, I love it.
But I think it's important to talk a little bit about the journey. For me, I came out about 10 years ago to friends and family, and then when I moved to Berlin to be on the broadcast team for Riot Games, I actually went back in the closet professionally. I made no comments on my sexuality, even to friends that I was working with that weren't on the broadcast team. So for me, I kind of retracted back in, and I think it's really important to talk about perhaps why that was so easy for me, and it's because I'm privileged in the sense that you can turn on almost any esports broadcast, and generally you'll see 75% of the broadcast team at least will look something like me. White, male, maybe glasses. I normally wear glasses. Brown hair, a beard. I'm not generalizing past. You can turn on a broadcast and, hey, look, it's some version of somebody that looks like me. So for me, dealing with a stressful new environment, I just kind of regressed a little bit back, which I was ashamed of for a while, and I've internalized and kind of stepped forward from that. But when I was towards the end of my tenure as a broadcaster with Riot, I found the strength to be able to talk about who I was and stand up. And a lot of that is thanks in part to meeting a wonderful partner of mine who helped me be strong with who I am. It's something that I think is going to be the biggest barrier in general for our entire community, because there's just a lot of pressure from being in the public eye, and I think every single person on this panel will be able to speak to that in their own way. And we deal with that in different ways, and for me, unfortunately, it was running from it for a while. I'm a lot more confident now in being able to be who I am, and I'm in a much better place. But certainly, I was very fortunate 10 years ago when I came out to friends and family that for the majority, everybody was just completely fine with me, exactly who I am, and was no issues there at all. But yeah, I think there is a fear that certainly I know that other people feel, where it's, hey, can I be myself? I don't feel ready for this. And as a community at whole, I don't want to generalize too much because everyone will have specific experiences. I don't think the esports community has yet got to a place where it's easy to just be yourself, regardless of who you are. I think there's a lot of work still to do there.
I think that's a fantastic way to just start the panel. And I mean, you can say it's negative, but I really think that in my core, I feel like that experience is probably an experience that a lot of people have had, where you come into an industry fully expecting to be yourself, but then having to kind of rein it in a little bit. And especially for someone like you that was in front of the camera, in front of thousands and thousands of people, having to compartmentalize that aspect of your life. I think, again, I don't know many esports people. I can't generalize, but I would imagine that is a feeling that a lot of people have had. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
Well, in my experience, I came from a different time, because back in 1980, I had to keep who I really was a deep, deep, dark secret, because then I would have been instantly fired, ostracized, and pretty much made homeless again. But so I kept it quiet, never said a thing. And of course, during my years in the video game industry, I personally saw people commit acts of homophobia, transphobia, and stuff, which also kept me quiet. It wasn't until early 2000 when I finally started was into an environment in which I worked at a company which actually had an open transgender policy that stated clearly that if any employee was to assault me or make my life miserable, they're the ones that are getting disciplined and not I. And that was what finally allowed me to come out, because I had seen friends of mine who'd come out and then were thrown out of the industry. And I just didn't want to join them. Now, of course, today, in 2020, despite being a dumpster fire of a year, at least it's the point now where people coming out is like, oh, you two, take a number. So, it's nowhere near as dangerous as a time as it was back when I was doing it. So I spent a great majority of my, or actually now more of a equal time of my career, buried deep in the closet, saying absolutely nothing and giving no hint of what lied beneath.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, for me, I came out in 2003, but to friends and family. But it was 2005 when I decided to pull off the Band-Aid, and I made a public posting on, at the time, LiveJournal, coming out.
LiveJournal.
And, well, 2005.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love it. I had one.
LiveJournal's still around. So at least unlike other things, especially things from Google, which comes up, stays there, and disappears after, at least LiveJournal's still there.
It's still going strong, holding on.
My coming out letter is still online on LiveJournal.
I love that.
But
so
when I did that letter, I was fully expecting to be completely disowned by the gaming community. But thankfully, it had matured enough to the point where they embraced me. And for the last 15 years, I felt nothing but love and acceptance, which made me wonder, why didn't I come out sooner?
That's fantastic, because you said that was in 2003 when you initially came out of the closet. Because you were already
my friends and family,
right,
not publicly.
Right, and because you were already, you were working for Contraband Gaming at that time, or you were Contraband Gaming.
Yeah, but I had to close down Contraband Games, and I took a job at EA, and that was when I saw.
That's right.
Because because back then, when I was running both Logicware and Contraband, it was still an environment where if they found that the CEO or CTO was trans, I would have probably had a lot of people quit.
Oh, that
was my fear. I don't know. I mean, for all I know, they would have all embraced me.
Right.
But I have found some people who I used to work with back then, even to this day, still don't talk to me. So therefore, they would definitely have been on the list of people who would have quit. And of course, who would want to work for someone who is trans? It's the fear at the time, because I've seen people who came out as trans or lesbian, in the cases I personally have seen, in which once they came out, within a year, they were out of the industry because they were just simply discriminated against so much that they just had to find someplace else to go. I did not want to join them, and let alone I didn't want to destroy my company by me coming out with my secret.
Sure. And after you came out, you found that it was a little bit more accepting than you originally had feared.
Yeah, and at the same time, me working at a company was a lot less stressful than me constantly trying to figure out how to make payroll every 2 weeks.
Right.
May I add something quickly to what
absolutely,
said?
yes, go for it.
The feeling of, oh, I should have done this sooner, was exactly how I felt when I professionally came out again in 2017. I went, oh, I had a platform. I should have been using this the entire time, because at some point, and not to be immodest, but I think at some point, most LGBTQ plus people will think, why is there nobody that represents me and my community on the screen? And I'm like, damn it, I had an opportunity to do that, and I actually tweeted way back in 2017, I was like, I will never let that opportunity slip again. To try and put representation in front of people that need to see it.
We are going to get into representation within esports, and I am so glad to hear you say about that, because I have so many questions about representation and what it means to be a queer person in this industry. So I'm so grateful that you're wanting to talk about that. But Ricky, what about you? What were your experiences coming out?
Well, my experience is coming out. I actually had to come out twice because I identify as a transgender female. I go by she/her pronouns, and initially, well, I've always kind of felt like, even as a young child, I always felt very feminine and felt like a woman, like a girl. But my initial experience coming out was around 2002. I was in the fighting game community, and I used to go to a town called Union City, which is in the Bay Area, and I used to go and play video games on console, fighting games. I used to practice with two of my other friends, and they were also competitors who played as well. And my friend Kim, he'd always come pick me up, and just one day, just out of curiosity, he asked me like, do you happen to be gay? Because I just want to know, because you're my friend and I really care about you, and I just want you to know that I just feel like you might be, and if you are, that I'm okay with it, and you could tell me. And that was kind of like my foray into coming out. So he was the first person I ever came out to, and I was just always kind of scared to come out because I felt that when I would be on like IRC chats back in the day, I felt like people would always make fun of gay people and just trans people and just everybody. So I felt it wasn't the right time. But he made me feel that I was in a safe space. So I came out to him, and shortly after, I came out to a bunch of my friends in the gaming community. And even though I came out as gay, I still didn't really feel right. I didn't really feel like myself. I didn't really identify as that
Right.
because I identified so much more as a female. And at that time, I didn't even really know what being transgender was. I had no inkling, no idea of it. But the only thing that I kind of identified with was I used to love watching the RuPaul talk show, and I used to always think, well, maybe I'm like RuPaul, like maybe am I a drag queen because I feel so feminine. I don't know. Is that what I am?
Right.
And then eventually, as time went on, I just kept thinking about it over and over, and I would get more and more sad and depressed about it. And eventually, I would start researching it, and I found out that I was transgender, like through the internet. But I would find out so many negative things. You would read so many negative things about trans people on the internet, about how they would be murdered and killed, or you would read random things that people would think transgender people are pedophiles and like, trying to steal your children, and like all these negative things you would hear about trans people that are just not true. And
Right.
I wouldn't know any better what to believe, so I'd be like, well, is that me? I'm not that. And so I've kind of like hidden in myself and never really told anybody. And it was until 2013 where it started becoming a little bit more mainstream, and I kind of couldn't hold it anymore. And I told my best friend Abby, I told her that I was indeed a transgender woman, and I want to come out now. And she was very happy for me, and we basically cried together, and I felt such a big weight lifted off my shoulders when I finally came out, that I could finally be myself. But that was to my friends. I didn't really come out. I didn't really come out publicly yet in the gaming world, which I was very terrified to do initially. But to my surprise, when I came out in the video game community, everybody was they welcomed me with open arms, and it was kind of like a lot of my really close gaming friends were kind of like, "Oh, we kind of figured already because you're so feminine and effeminate, and you're already dressed very, very womanly, so we already kind of assumed that that was the road you would be taking or whatever." And so it made me feel really welcomed and loved, pretty much. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the only thing that I was really afraid of back then would be, like James said, the esports community is not very adept nowadays yet to dealing with LGBTQ issues, I feel. So I was just scared what people would think of me, not so much in the gaming world of competing, but the gaming world of fans and viewership. And the fans showed me a lot of love, but there's, of course, like, there's the naysayers out there who are going to give you crap no matter what. But I kind of just try to put that behind me, and I just kind of just wanted to live my life and be myself and live free.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that. I see, and I'm getting a theme throughout all of this. It's coming out to friends and family first and foremost,
Mm-hmm.
and then keeping that compartmentalized, and then slowly, maybe begrudgingly at times, making the proclamation to the public. I haven't. I'm getting that that's a general path that.
Yeah, kind of like dipping your toes in first
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
closest people, and then kind of like letting it trickle out slowly but
Well,
surely.
and I guess that makes sense, right? Because you want to feel safe
Yeah, totally.
first, and then before you make any big decisions with strangers. Sheen, what about you?
Yeah. So my experience is, I would say, pretty different from everybody else's. Just because I'm always behind the camera, I don't think I'm very like public facing in terms of like people actually seeing me. I do a lot of stuff that people see, but they wouldn't know I was the one doing it because I'm a producer, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of my coming out, quote unquote, they're like micro coming outs because I've never made like a big announcement, right? Even when I was in high school, I think all my friends knew I was gay, but not the entire school knew I was gay, like not my entire class, right? Like, and that's because there was like a fear back then, like mid 2000s, like in our high school there was the lesbian, the gay man, right? And they're always getting like the big brunt of the bullying, and like seeing that even back then, I knew I did not want to face that. And that's like a lot of like, I don't know if that's cowardice or just self-preservation, but I just didn't want to be known for that because I was doing a lot of other stuff. I was doing video, I was drawing in high school, and people knew me as the art kid. And I just took that label and made that my label instead of becoming, oh, it's the other lesbian, right? um, and I think that sort of mindset just kind of carried on throughout my entire life because I never like really came out to my family. Like I've never formally came out to my mom or my dad or like my siblings, but like they know. I mean, look what I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing flannel and an MTV tank top. So I think they just know by the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, it's really nice because then it's kind of like unspoken, and it doesn't put me in a position of vulnerability where they can directly kind of address whether they're homophobic or not. And that carries on to my professional life because I've also never said I was gay in my professional life. It's come out every now and again. I'll be like, oh, my girlfriend this, or like, yeah, I went to this, like, I went to DragCon, or just stuff that like kind of hints at the fact that I am gay. And generally, everybody's been pretty accepting about it. Um, but I think there's still that level of um, being uncomfortable about making a public statement of coming
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, like I said, it's self-preservation. I don't really want to make like a big deal of it. And thankfully now that's kind of really easy, an easy stance to take because unlike being in the 80s where it would have been pretty much a death threat here and there for saying that kind of thing, you're just kind of accepted. You are, like Rebecca said, you're just like, oh, okay, you're another gay person. Take a ticket, sit right down.
Yeah.
We'll have our gay lounge later. We'll talk about this gay thing and that gay thing. We'll talk about Blind Manor. We'll talk about Drag Race. And yeah, it's nice, and it's nice that it's not a big deal. But I also know that I'm very, very, very much um, in a place of like, I don't know what the correct word is, but like it's nice that there's that like acceptance up front. Like I don't have to make a big deal of it if I don't want it to be.
Sure, sure, and I think that's a great. I think that's a great distinction between some of the other stories of where like, I've just kind of existed and I haven't made this proclamation. I personally was the same way with my grandparents. I never officially came out to them, but they always asked, "Oh, how my partner was doing," and my grandfather asked like, "Oh, is he still your buddy?" And I thought it was just the sweetest thing, and it was just one of those like, we don't need to talk about it, but we know. So I definitely get that. I understand. I think that from a professional perspective, you have a great insight of what it means just to be kind of in the nitty gritty and to focus on the work, without the sort of public eye, just like here. But I think that's incredibly exciting, and an incredibly exciting way to just exist as a queer person in the esports community. And I'm certainly thankful for you.
Yes, it definitely takes a lot of pressure off of me in terms of like how I have to carry myself in my professional life.
Right.
I'm sure everybody else here, since you're all much more public facing than I am, there's different kinds of like kind of code switching in terms of your professional life because you speak with your coworkers differently than you would to somebody who is like broadcasting like a big company or like your even your manager, or and then you code switch again when you talk to your fans or even on Twitter.
Right. Well, I think that's a really good kind of segue about how we talk to people and how we talk to fans and stuff like that. Um, but I kind of want to just I want to touch on one point. And this question is for anyone, but and I have no suspicions or anything, but I'm just imagining. I'm imagining that there is an esports professional somewhere in the world that is still in the closet. How would you speak to that person? Or would you encourage an esports professional, player, host, commentator, whatever? Would you encourage that person to come out? Or would you say, you know, do whatever you want? You know, how would you approach that? And this is for
Well,
anyone.
I would approach it first by asking the person what's their home life. You see, in today's day and age, it's really hard to justify staying in the closet publicly. However, that doesn't mean that they have a family that's accepting. And the reason they may be in the closet is not necessarily because they're afraid of the public, they're afraid of those who they are close to. And therein, they may have a very justifiable reason to stay in the closet, because for many of us, the moment you come out to the closet, while you may be embraced with the public, your family will reject you. And that, in some cases, is far more devastating than loss of career and livelihood. So there is no such thing as one size fits all. Everybody's problem is unique. And that's the first way I would approach something like this is, are they hidden because they just don't want to lose their family due to religiosity or personal beliefs or whatever? But if that's not a barrier, then I would ask the question, why not?
Right.
Yeah, and I think kind of tacking on to that, I think we have kind of the choice to come out on our own terms now. So if you're not comfortable doing it, then I would not be the person to say you should come out even though you're not comfortable with it, right? And I don't think any of us would say that either.
Oh, right.
But it's like a gamut of like issues that come up. Like I don't think anybody's ever going to get any backlash for coming out in the public now, but in that person's head, it might be the case that they're going to lose like millions of fans if they come out, right? Even if that's not the case, it's just that fear. And then they might have a family that's accepting, but then like the community, whichever community that may be, might not be like, they might be like openly homophobic, because those fandoms do exist where like it's very toxic and very macho, right? um so I would say, like, honestly, it's kind of like a cop out, but it's come out on your own terms. It's really just up to you.
Sure. Sure. I think I think that there is for just from total moderator's perspective, I think that they're tacking on with Rebecca. The three things that I ask are you physically safe? Are you emotionally safe? And are you financially safe? Those three things I think determine whether or not a person should come out. But it's that third thing, are you financially safe, that I think a lot of queer esports professionals struggle with, because if they start to lose popularity, are they going to lose viewers? Are they going to lose fans? Are they going to lose sponsors? You know, I don't know how sponsorships work because I'm just a little Ida, but you know, you all are professionals in this industry. Can you speak to something about that? About like how a person might feel about losing sponsors because of their sexuality?
Yeah, absolutely. As after leaving Riot, as a freelance commentator, it's similar thing, and I've worked with sponsorships in the past as well. There is that fear. I think generally these days, as bad as this sounds, I think a lot of companies have realized that there's no room for not being LGBT friendly right now. Like a lot of companies,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless of how much the hateful fans will want to say that, oh, we'll boycott a product X Y Z thing, there's no real room to cut people out for sexuality or gender identity or any kind of expression like that when it comes to equality. One thing I want to touch on just on the previous question is, because esports is such a global industry, there are other issues as well, and I don't want to trivialize people's experiences in America for sure. I understand that there's certainly many issues that are unanimous across the world. I'm sat in Berlin, which is 2 hours from Poland, and Poland have these abhorrent LGBT-free zones.
Yes,
So
I just read about that a couple weeks ago.
we work with players from these countries. Even major countries in esports like South Korea are not at a progressive level societally when it comes to LGBTQ inclusion. I couldn't count the number of players who I've spoken to, and they said, "Wow, you're the first gay person I've ever met." And I'm like, "You're the first gay person you know you've ever met," because you know LGBTQ people exist in all of these countries,
Right.
and it's this is one of these things that being such a global industry, I think there's a lot of pressure on people who just do not have that support system, as Rebecca was talking about, around them, and that's one of the issues where I think, especially in Europe and a lot of the countries where our players are from in Europe, it's just not quite as accepted. On the other hand, you have Scandinavia, who a lot of the Scandinavian countries really in the best way indifferent about things. So certainly there's some give and take there, but
Right.
yeah, there's a mix throughout the entirety of Europe
Sure.
that is interesting to look at.
Sure. Absolutely. I think we've all raised some really fantastic points on what it means to be an out person in esports and kind of the coming out experience. I want to transition now that we're just kind of moving on, or now that we've kind of, beaten this like a dead horse. I want to talk about the current attitudes within esports, and I feel like we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I specifically want to talk about other professionals, other managers, other people within your circle, within your bubble. Do you think that it is a welcoming and accepting and loving and inviting space? And this, again, this question is for everyone. So I want to just start with Stress. Do you want to start?
Yeah, because I'll start with, I think people think it is, but they haven't got the lived experience.
Aha!
And here's where I'll be careful and say that this is coming from my perspective as a gay man in Europe. Everybody wants to believe that oh, we love LGBT people, we're accepting, and I'm like, but are we equal yet? Because I feel proud to say that I can work at a place and I'm accepted, and that's okay. But when you don't quite get the same leniency that a couple that perhaps identify as heterosexual do, and this is very minute, and I wouldn't say for me it's a major issue, but there's certainly times where you see and you think, why am I subject to XYZ rule that doesn't quite make sense, but this other couple didn't have to deal with this problem. And that's why I say, fortunate that I'm accepted, but these things that kind of get under the skin and you start questioning, oh,
Mm.
is it quite there yet? Are we quite there at the point where everything's equal? And I would say it's certainly less of a problem for somebody who's cisgendered like myself,
Sure.
who doesn't have to face you know waves more of horrid abuse. And certainly, like, I feel very privileged that is the position, so that is not lost on me, that's a comparatively compared to the dark thoughts in my head of where I thought I was going to be with people, it's certainly a lot easier to deal with for me.
Sure. Rebecca, what do you think about just the current attitudes within esports and esports professionals?
Well, the thing is that if you're exclusively going to be competing in the progressive countries like Canada, US, most of Europe, then coming out is fine and dandy. But like an example I'm going to say is that I was approached about a year ago to be a presenter at a organization doing an esports thing in Dubai. Obviously, they Googled my name. Didn't
Sure.
take long for them to rescind the invitation.
Right.
So there are like Russia, the Middle East, and there are pockets of Poland and other places where the moment they Google your name and find that you're gay or trans, you travel there, you're taking your life in your own hands. So while coming out The progressive countries is awesome. It's wonderful. But even in the U.S., there's still small pockets of places where they will hate you. And this is supposed to be a very progressive country, but as you've seen in 2016 to 2020, we've slid back a bit.
Yeah, it's been rough.
The, but the but what I was saying is that keep when you're coming out, also, and since esports is global, factor that in, because since Dubai is actually trying to become an esports hub, but unfortunately they're shooting themselves in the foot by being anti-LGBT, because there's a lot of us, and one of the things that we can do is just by being visible in esports, it's to send a message that we're here, and if you wish to embrace our industry, you need to also embrace all of the industry, because, as was stated earlier, LGBT money is just as green as everyone else's money.
Right. Yeah, and I think that both of you bring up, and it's something that I'm actually kind of upset with myself that I didn't mention in the topic notes. Like, I this sort of differences in countries and the sort of different global aspects of what it means to be queer, and how regionally it can be very different. Maybe is just the easiest way to say it. Um, Ricky, you are a current player in
Yeah.
esports. So I want to get your perspective from a player's perspective, from a competitor. How do you think that esports and the current attitude in that current bubble, how do you think that is?
Um, Obviously, I can only speak for fighting games, and
Sure.
I feel like everything. I've been fortunate enough to have been dealt very good cards in terms of because coming out as transgender and initially first gay, and I've had a wonderful experience with my sponsors and everybody that I've worked with of recently, and every place I've traveled to has been extremely good. But then the thing I want to add is like I've always thought that because I get messages from other transgender people or other gender nonconforming people saying that like they're bullied by people on the internet or they're bullied by people in their community. And what I come from is a community that's very accepting of me, but I want I and but like Rebecca says, you want to be accepting of the spectrum as a whole inside esports. And I almost feel like maybe people respect me because of my stature in the fighting game community, because of
Mm-hmm.
how good I am, and I don't want that to be a thing. I want people to be respected as a whole, no matter how good or how bad you are. We're all players. We're all here doing the same thing. We're all here to have fun and compete, and just be kind and nice to each other. So like I have amazing experiences, but sometimes I don't get that same feedback from other people. So I think sometimes maybe it's because of that. I just wish that wasn't the case, and it's getting better slowly but surely. But I still think we have a lot of growing to do in the community overall.
Right. So you think that because you're because you're a fantastic player and a fantastic competitor, that sort of people might give you a pass because of that.
I think that sometimes because it's like I promote a lot of I promote the FGC as being extremely welcoming and inviting, because it really is. And to everybody I talk to, all my friends, all the people in the community, actually everybody's extremely nice. But every now and then I'll get messages about people from people asking me, how do you deal with bullying and whatnot in the community? And it's like that's something that I really don't see too often. So I'm like, is that's kind of odd to me. So I wonder that is it because of that? And I feel like that might be a big proponent to it.
Right. Now, do you think that now, a question, just follow up.
Mhm.
So, the bullying that people were messaging you about, was that, do you know if that was from, like, fans, from viewers, or was that from other people within the industry?
Usually players. I feel everybody who I meet, every professional who I meet in the industry who is an org owner, or somebody who runs their own events. They're all extremely kind, all extremely welcoming.
Uh huh.
There's been incidents where people will use derogatory terms, call people nasty names to LGBT people, and these people
Mm-hmm.
will get banned instantly from the events and never allowed to come back again, which I think is an amazing to do, and it's amazing to show support like
That's
that
great,
to
yeah.
yeah to just to anybody in the community, because I feel like that's the only way that's going to make people want to, one, come out, and two, to feel accepted and welcomed in the community. Because I feel like that's what we're gunning for, and that's what we're aiming for, is for us to not only be allowed, obviously we're in the community, but we want to feel loved and appreciated and accepted. We don't want to have to feel segregated in a community that, and especially something that we love to do, you know.
Sure, sure. Now, Sheen, you work, sort of behind the cameras. So I think that you might have a unique perspective of just what it means to be queer within the esports community, like the esports professional community, I should say. Can you maybe speak to what it is like?
Yeah. Obviously, this is all very myopic to like Southern California, which is already very accepting.
Mm.
But I feel like within the professional community, I generally don't have any issues. But I do find, like I said earlier, I do find myself code switching sometimes depending on who I'm talking to. I don't know if that's just like myself trying to gauge somebody before I fully like come out to them, I guess. But I find that generally, if I'm talking to coworkers, to people from other orgs, or like to Riot contacts or EA contacts, then it's like everybody's super accepting, and I think that's because there's just more of us generally in the professional space. However, I will say that there is a dichotomy because there's fans out there that are not shy about spewing hate and bullying and just sending all these toxic messages, and they will tie it to their name, which I think is kind of dumb on their part because you have receipts now everywhere. But it's not uncommon with every single video that we produce, with every single post that we make on Twitter. There's always going to be some hate, and I've kind of written that off as like it's just what comes with the space, comes with the territory, right? But
Sure.
I don't know if I should be giving a pass to that because it's still hurtful. Because there's TSM fans out there that are LGBTQ that will see that kind of hate, or will just comment with like a slur, and if we as part of the organization allow that, then what does that say about us? So there's kind of like there's accountability in that sense, where if somebody is being mean and toxic in our comments, then we will address it directly. So, but what if we don't catch it? It hurts overall
Well,
for
that
everybody involved.
that leads me directly into my next question. And it was, do we think that leagues or managers have a responsibility to LGBTQ people? And I think that can kind of go across the board. We can kind of expand that question to, do public figures within the esports community have a responsibility to the LGBTQ viewers? Like, do they have it? Is there a responsibility to them currently?
I think so. I think that there is even I feel like even if we don't want that responsibility, especially if we are a popular player, I feel like it is we need to do our due diligence because like I said earlier, I feel like we're not we need to be represented, and I feel like as a me as being a young child, I feel like like I said, I had almost no representation whatsoever. Like I thought I was like I thought I was like RuPaul. Like I thought, and RuPaul's not even trans. You know, I had no one to look up to as a young kid. So I feel like for me personally, I feel like it is I need to do my due diligence into just being active and to be and to show representation and to put myself out there in a sense of who I am as a person because maybe I can help other people want to come out or make other people brave to want to be themselves and to join the community because look it's like be like look if I can do it then you can do it too. And I really do think that it is up to the organizations to be more loud and proud about just LGBT people and not just have some like little like flag during Pride weekend and saying, "Look, we support you guys," and that it needs to be much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I love the organization that I work for, Evil Geniuses, because they extend whatever LGBT stuff they have way outside of Pride. We had a show called Pridecast that we were doing for months after Pride and just talking about all kinds of LGBT issues. And it was like a podcast that we had, and it was amazing. And I feel like more organizations need to step up and do stuff like that to represent the LGBTQ people.
Right. Right. And so you were talking about this too, right? You were talking about wanting to take on some of that responsibility, or you wish that you had made the decision to come out earlier. So, I mean, I guess this question kind of leads into that. Do you think that esports professionals have a responsibility to the fans or to any to viewers, I suppose?
Sorry, was that a question of a follow up for Ricky, or is
No, it
that
was a
just?
follow up for you because you had
Oh, okay.
you had spoken about wanting to come out earlier. I mean, this kind of goes
Yeah.
into that.
Certainly want to echo. I don't think I could have said it any better than Ricky in that moment. And also Sheen, I believe organizations have a responsibility to curate the community of fans and their behavior as a whole. There will always be outside people who are a bad look for a community, but generally there is a responsibility there in my mind as an individual. I felt like I missed the boat when I did as a broadcaster not really stand up for who I am as a person on broadcast, but I've been doing as much as possible with the team that I work with. Now we're called Mad Lions, but in 2019 we were called Splice. Anybody that's followed esports for a while will recognize Splice. And one of the things that we did, I managed to get props for this.
Yes.
Thing we did for 2019 Christopher Street Day here in Berlin, which is our Pride celebration. The League of Legends European Championship turns their logos to rainbow. They promote a lot of Pride activities. And one thing that we did that we were immensely proud of doing was we actually changed our jersey. Typically, this here is full yellow. We changed our jersey to a
Love
rainbow
it.
jersey, and all of the proceeds on the sales of these went to ILGA Europe, who are a charity that work with governments here in Europe to kind of lobby for LGBT rights in a positive way. But the important thing there, our 5 League of Legends players, who, to my knowledge, none of them are part of the LGBTQ community themselves, uh, were courageous enough as allies to play their games on stage that weekend in those jerseys with a rainbow collar and logo, which, as somebody who is has always been desperate to see players like take a stand, and Ricky, I think you're a trailblazer on that, and I can't speak enough to the strength and courage there. But to see 5 people that I work with day in day out take that kind of stand, that's the type of representation. And I agree, I would love it to be all year. I would love more solidarity. That's the kind of organization that I want to work with, is one that actually stands up strong and puts that forward for the world. So that's something that I'm happy to have been a part of. And then this year, I kind of broke a lot of the European teams into supporting Pride Week even more. There was some umming and ahhing because we were all broadcasting from home. So I actually went and delivered flags to every single one of the teams of the LEC that would take them. So for about 6 weeks, the LEC had different flags, whether it was the trans flag, the rainbow flag. I think there was also the pan flag and the bi flag there. Just random different
Nice.
shots throughout the European broadcast. They just managed to hide out there in the back. So some of the teams still have them there. You watch that content and you see it in the background. I'm like,
I
yes.
love that. That's so exciting. What about you, Rebecca? What do you think? Do you think that there's a responsibility that sort of the top people have to the little people when it comes to queer
I,
representation of
I do,
esports?
and I believe it's all top people, not just LGBTQ. It's all of them, in the
Yes.
sense that if anybody says anything homophobic, transphobic, etc., it's their duty to call it out among fellow announcers or the fans, to
Mm-hmm.
let them know that this type of toxic behavior is not welcome in the entire esports world, because only then do those who wish to make it toxic will realize that their bullying is not welcome, and they'll just either stop the bullying, or in most cases they'll just go someplace else to spread their hate, because that's all they're for. They're not there to enjoy esports, they're there because they just want to spread hate.
Right.
um, by making an environment by everyone, it is just saying to those who are LGBTQ to please welcome to the fold. We want you to be members of our family. And to those of you who wish to spew toxic stuff, um, go away. You know, we don't want you.
Right. Excuse me. So I'm part of me is hesitant to bring this topic forward, or at least this subject, because the person that I want to reference isn't here and I can't ask him directly. But I I have been a follower of the Overwatch League since the inaugural season, and I have been a fan of the Houston Outlaws before they got really, really bad. But they were, they're fine. But I'm a huge Houston Outlaws fan. But I think one of the things that drew me to the Houston Outlaws was the fact that they had an open and out gay player, Muma, who is their main tank. Um, he, I think he's always kind of been out of the closet. Again, I wish you were here. I can't ask him directly, but he's always kind of been out on the scene. But the Overwatch League became very mainstream. I think Sheen, you were saying that it was the Disney of esports, and I totally agree with you. I think that's a fantastic analogy. When it was sort of brought to light that Muma was, an out gay man within the LGBTQ community, I want to show you guys the tweet that he said, and I don't know if you're in the chat or if you can see this, but I will read it to you. He said, "I'm just a boy trying to play some video games. It's cool being one of the only LGBT players in the league, and I hope I can inspire and encourage some people to be true to themselves. With that said, I don't want it to define me as a person. I'm just playing some tank dudes." The reason that I wanted to put this on screen and I wanted to kind of reference this is because I think this is one of the only times that we as viewers and we as esports, enthusiasts have actually seen someone say directly to fans, "This is a part of me, but I don't, it's another part of me. It doesn't make me a player, or it doesn't define who I am as a person. I'm a player." When I first read that tweet, I was a little taken aback because I am of the belief that as a queer person, as one of the only queer people in this arena, I think that you have a greater weight placed on your shoulders, and you should be speaking out for the little gay boy at home who is afraid to get on mic during his Overwatch games because he has an effeminate voice. However, I realize that I might be projecting a little. But do you, and this is for all of you, do you think that there is some validity and some merit behind that? Where, yes, it's a part of me, but I'm not going to let it be the whole part of me. And I hope that I can encourage people, but maybe not talk to me about it forever.
Well, for one, I agree with his sentiments on this one issue in the sense that when true equality is achieved, what he stated, that we are judged by our merits and not by whether or not we're LGBT, is when we've achieved equality. Because I personally would love to see a world in which people look to me being LGBT as significant to me being me as the fact I'm a brunette. Because just because I'm a brunette doesn't increase my video game skills or not. It's just part of who I am. Being LGBT doesn't increase or decrease my video game skills. It's just who I choose to love. That's all that matters. And I would very much love it that in the case of esports, me being LGBT is just as significant as whether or not I'm a blonde or a brunette. And of course, that's hopefully all of us are trying to strive for, because then we're accepted in society as equals, because no one cares about whether or not, all they care about is, will Ricky here beat the crap out of me on Street Fighter, whereas in Space Invaders, well, you're mine.
I want to see that.
I'll get destroyed.
Well, I think that's a great point. Once we achieve that level of equality, that's fantastic. Yes, absolutely, I agree with you. We're not there yet. So maybe you want to, I don't know. For me, it's like, you have a platform, you have a pedestal, use it. Again, I realize that as a queer person, as an audience member, I have my opinion means nothing. But just from a queer viewer's perspective, I was like, I don't know. Do I agree with that? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I
think No, please
Oh,
go.
Everyone go.
oh, all of us at the same time. Uh, I can personally see where he's coming from in some sense, even though I'm so vocal about my transness and I try to advocate for the trans community and the LGBT community as a whole. I can see where he's coming from because I too feel like me being trans is such a small part of my life and my existence. And I've also struggled in the gaming community, not so much with people being negative to me online, but more or less saying like rude comments like, oh, like since Ricky transitioned, like is she gonna suck at fighting games now? Is she gonna suck at video games now? Like implying that women aren't good at video games. Like I deal with stuff like that. So and then I'll also deal with things like oh, like instead of like judging me by my gameplay, people want to judge me by like, oh, like Ricky looks ugly today or Ricky looks hot today. Like it's like I feel like the focus when I transition, the focus switch everything about being trans and nothing about my gameplay. And when it used to be all about my gameplay and nothing about like my sexual identity, not even when I came out as gay, it was still all about my gameplay. And then even nowadays, there's times where I get opportunities and they want to like focus and iron really on my transness, which I'm completely okay with. But I mean, I do feel there are times where I get exhausted talking about the exact same thing over and over and over and regurgitating the same thing over and over. But I do also realize that it's something that needs to be said and it's something that needs to be done because, like you said just now, Ida, that I feel like what if there's like a little trans girl or a little trans boy out there who's playing video games and wants to compete and they don't have anybody to look up to, and I could be that person for them. So I continue to just advocate whenever I can and whenever possible.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really, really interesting thing that comes from a lot of what we've talked about. At least is the case for me. I think when we hear people say it gets better, and I've done work with the It Gets Better project. When I did that video two years ago, I didn't really understand what that meant. But to me, that ability to the longer you live your truth, I think the easier it becomes to just kind of say, oh yeah, that's just a small part of it. Like before coming out, it's like, oh, this is the biggest part of my personality. Oh, this is terrible. It's going to define me. But the further you go from coming out, in my experience, is the easier it becomes to take on that responsibility. To actually be representation for others, because I think that time after coming out, short term especially, can be so tumultuous where even if things look like they're going fine or great, hopefully in a positive way, you still have those voices in the back of your head saying, no, things are going to be terrible. Your whole life is ruined. It's going to change. It's going to be the worst experience you've ever had. So I think anybody that goes quickly from coming out to being a figure like that deserves a lot of respect. And this is a moment where I want to take just a moment to give credit to somebody who's in the chat. Captain Fluke in chat. Fluke is a Rainbow Six commentator who recently started living their truth as a commentator, as a trans
Fantastic.
individual on broadcast. And as expected, there's a lot of backlash there, but it takes an immense amount of courage. And I want to recognize that in anybody in esports who's taken that step and so quickly stepped out into the limelight and said, this is who I am. I hope you see who I am and love me for who I am. Because
Fantastic.
as I said before, I wasn't able to do that right away. And it's one thing I wish I could have done more.
Sure. Sure. Sheen, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was gonna add on just like for this topic overall. I think like the greatest thing about esports and gaming in general is that's kind of like our biggest equalizer, right? Like if you're good at a game, you're good at a game. If you just happen to be gay, trans, lesbian, whatever, then it doesn't really matter because all we see is your in-game name and you destroying somebody in League or you destroying somebody in Smash or something. Then it's like, okay, cool. So Sonic Fox just so happens to be like whatever label, right?
Right.
He gets hate because he's queer.
Right.
But in competition, the great equalizer is he's still destroying all these people that are toxic to him, and the fans that are toxic to him can't really say much because he's still the best at what he does. So
Exactly.
yeah, so I think part of wanting that coming out and like being represented in esports is because not there's not a lot of people that are openly out. So like when somebody does come out, you kind of latch onto it and you're like, okay, you're the gay person. You're playing my favorite game. I really, really want you to represent me. But it goes back to the whole, are you comfortable with the amount of coming out you've done, and is it within your comfort level to be as public or not public with what you've done?
Sheen, I think that that is a fantastic point, and it really put into perspective what I had been doing to Muma, because I'm an Overwatch League fan. I love playing tank. I'm a gay man. Muma's a gay man. Like, he's the one. He's the one that I'm going to cling to, and I realize there is that level there, or there has to be that level of disconnect. Like, I can't put all of my faith into one person to be the shining beacon of rainbow hope that I want, there to be in esports. I don't think that's fair. I do think that we have to kind of step back and ask ourselves the same question. Do you have added responsibility as an out person within this industry to the little gay person that is either just starting, or who hasn't come out of the closet yet, or who gets bullied in match chat because they sound different? you know I there has to be that balance, I suppose. But I do think
There
that
does.
Sheen, I think that you said it exactly right there. I think there has to be that or rather, we see the one gay person and you're like, oh, that's it. So what if
Also, I
I
just want to make a quick correction in
yeah.
the chat. I'm so sorry. Sonic Fox is they, them. I messed up one that was pronounced. I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
you know what? I invited Sonic Fox into this panel, but they didn't get back to me either. So no worries. But maybe the next one. We'd love to see that.
One thing that talking about the how much responsibility. One thing to remember at the end of the day is we're all people and we're all fallible as well. I've had wonderful messages and even messages where people said, hey, how can I come out, this is how I want to be. um and I don't say this begrudgingly, we all have our own pressure as well.
Sure.
So certainly I think latching onto one individual and like blasting them with like, you're my gay icon, you can do everything for me, it can be a lot of pressure. And I certainly try my absolute hardest to be kind and understanding to everybody. But I'm not the largest figure in esports. I'll be modest and say that I can't imagine how it is to be a figure who probably gets hundreds of messages weekly
Sure.
that says that, because I can only imagine the amount of added pressure on their shoulders to try and at least interact a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I think that actually, I think that's a great segue, because we there are so few out people within esports. We can kind of move on to like diversity as a whole within esports. I think esports is a rather homogenous community, I think, is probably a fair word. It's all pretty similar. Stress, I think you had mentioned it during your introduction. There's a lot of people that look like you. There's a lot of people, no matter what league you're watching, there's going to be
Sucks
some.
trying to build a brand when they're so generic. What do you mean there's 10 white guys that look exactly like me on every single broadcast? Damn.
When I
Okay,
saw
we'll have
your
to do something different.
when I saw your photo on Twitter, I was like, "What is Doa doing in this League of Legends thing?" I'm kidding. No, but with diversity becoming more apparent, I think is a fair word. How do leagues and how do esports, tournaments and all of these things, how do they increase that diversity without playing diversity bingo? There is, you know, a dime a dozen tall, skinny, white, cisgendered male casters or analysts. And I love you, Stress. I think you're fantastic. But I'm just.
Oh, I'm not tall, so you didn't talk about me.
I'm piggybacking on your point. Like, we want to see more representation. We want to see more diversity within this industry. How do we do that without saying, oh, well, I need a black trans woman because that ticks all these boxes? You. How do we do that? How does esports do that?
One area that already exists, and maybe if you don't want to touch this, Ricky, that's fine. Maybe I'm setting this up as a failure. One area of esports that I think actually is far further down the line on being a diverse community is the fighting games community. You look at any fighting games broadcast, and they're not, they don't have the 10 of the same white guy with brown hair behind a desk. So perhaps if you want to talk about that, I just wanted to acknowledge it to start that question.
Yeah, that's why I feel like I'm very lucky in a sense. I feel because the FGC, even as a young kid, like how I mentioned before, like I'd read stuff on IRC chats about people like just being derogatory and negative in the fighting game community, but when I'm actually in the fighting game community, everybody is so welcoming and accepting and loving that I didn't really have any kind of like negative experiences being in the sorry, there was a fly being in the FGC. I've always felt love and compassion from everybody inside the community at tournaments, so I always felt that was a great thing. And like I don't know, yeah, I just never had a really bad experience with it, and the FGC in general is so diverse and so open to everybody. But but yeah, no, I completely see what you guys see because I will see like I'll open YouTube and I'll see like random Fortnite compilation videos and people just like going in on LGBTQ people and just like and even with like Call of Duty, like people like going crazy on like the mic to just somebody for like how their voice is or just for them being gay or trans or anything, even African American. I just think it's so insane and like I can't imagine it coming from the fighting community ever.
I think that's great. My question then, as a follow up for that, is if, from my perspective, and again, I'm not an expert, but from my perspective, fighting games are solitary. If I'm not, if like it's you are the player, and it is all about you.
Yeah, not
With
team based.
yeah, it's not team based, but with something like League of Legends, with something like Overwatch, there are. I mean, and it's much. You have to communicate. Like you have to know what your team is doing at all times. Um, could the difference in something that is solitary, like Rebecca with Space Invaders, or with you with the fighting games, could that be the sort of thing that makes it a little bit more of a unique and accepting and individualized arena for people because it's all about you as a person and it's not so much as a team.
I
Oh, go ahead, go ahead. No, go ahead. It's
No,
okay.
please, Ricky, it's
Yeah.
you're the experienced player here.
Um, I I think potentially like it could be like because I mean I can't speak for team based games, but I'm not sure actually because I know for me I feel like people feel like playing playing for yourself is more nerve wracking than playing on a team. But then I feel the other way because I feel like I wouldn't want to let my team down. Like I just feel like yeah, I'm not sure.
I
Sure.
think going into teams, so I work closely with the League of Legends players here for Mad Lions, and this certainly isn't representative of how they feel, but I can extrapolate through the last 5 years of working with teams quite closely. Everything about team games at the top level is about trust. When you're
Mm.
an individual, it's your trust in yourself, right? And you believe in everything that you do. But in a team game, you need trust in your players, in your your teammates. And I think even if there's as goodwill between teammates and a good environment that's been built, I think as an individual being LGBTQ, I can imagine that trying to put up anything that could break that trust, even if it wouldn't, there's a fear there of, if I say this, are they going to trust me? Are they going to want to be in the same room as me? Do they want to live in the same house as me? Because sometimes, players live in gaming houses together.
Sure.
So I wonder whether there is an aspect of that where it's easier to keep it quiet and not break this unwritten trust, which I hope one day we can get past. I think we even see that in traditional sports. In soccer in the UK, in the Premier League, there's not even one LGBTQ player, and they do rainbow laces with Stonewall charity every
Sure.
year at the highest level of soccer. So I wonder whether it's kind of a transfer of that where it's not rocking the boat.
Mm.
Because I felt that a little bit on the broadcast team, even though we're not like a high caliber athlete. Certainly, I want to trust the person stood next to me, so I was afraid of being myself there. So perhaps it's that.
Sure. I mean, it's still a team. I mean, you are still a part of a group of people that are working to a common goal. And in esports, like team based, it's about capturing a point or winning a game. For a broadcast team, it's about making sure that it's the smoothest broadcast it can possibly be, and you don't want to do anything that might throw a wrench into that. Rebecca, you were the very first national video game champion as an individual player. Do you think that that would have been the same if you were been like a part of a team, or do you think that being trans would have been a little bit more difficult as part of a team or as an individual?
Well, first off, is I just wasn't a team player back in 1980 because I had this dark secret. So
Right.
therefore, the odds that if there were such thing as team games, I probably wouldn't have been a member of such one because I'd be too terrified that they would find out my secret.
Mm.
So it's not really. And also, when I think about it, even back then, team games just didn't exist. It
Sure.
was, the only thing that existed was one-on-ones because
Mm.
there was a game called Slot Racers I played a lot, which is myself and another player would play these little race cars, but we're shooting at each other. Um, that was as far as I ever went with interacting with another person. So I don't really have any perspective to offer other than I played games at a time when team games didn't just wasn't a thing.
Sure. No, I totally get that. I totally get that. So we're I told y'all guys 90 minutes runs fast. So we still have about 20 minutes. So I want to quickly, as quickly as we can with like the next like 5 minutes. I want to talk about um oh, there it is. The fans. We quickly kind of or briefly went over this, but I do want to get kind of your your general perspective of what the fan base as a whole is now. And this is the moderator's note, and I made this note in our brief. I said I realize that this question requires a gross amount of generalization for millions of people, and I realize that that's not entirely fair. But I do think it's important to get your perspective because all of you are professionals in this industry. You all experience fans in a much different way than we as consumers do. So I want to get your perspective on what it's like, being where you are and seeing the fans' reaction to queer people, queer players, queer professionals. How do you think the fan base is? Do you think it's accepting? Do you think it's ambivalent? How do you feel? Stress?
I feel like it's, while I'll still make some generalizations, I think there's two different sets. Online, I think it's as accepting as really can be for a gay male. As I said, this is certainly my experience. The one thing that I feel incredibly positive about is, and sadly we haven't been able to do this in 2020, as soon as we step into an arena, as soon as we step into a studio, as soon as we're there face to face and I can look you in the eyes, nothing but support. Like, our community are some of the most passionate, loving, like supportive fans, and as soon as we're on the same like geographical location, I've never had a problem from fans.
That's fantastic.
I feel very happy to be able to say that, and that's the kind of community and safe space that at Mad Lions we try and curate with our online community as well. A little bit trickier. It's always random people, right? But I think
Sure.
most fans are, I would even say, pro LGBTQ rights as opposed to indifferent. From my experience in the corners that we curate, anyway.
See, and that's fantastic. I would not have thought that. But again, for me, I'm only seeing, the Twitter comments, or I'm only seeing the chat, go up on YouTube or Twitch or wherever, and that's my only, insight to what a fan is like. But you interact with them all the time, so I think that's great insight. Rebecca, what do you think about the current environment of fans are for esports as it relates to queer people?
The fans have actually been pretty good. I mean, it's always been just a small, tiny subgroup that's toxic. I get, even to this day, I still get fan mail and people who've seen me on podcasts such as this, or the special that I was on Netflix, and people would just say how I inspired them when they heard my story. I've only had well, I mean, I'm just going to go with what I know. And in the last year, I've had over 70, 80, somewhere in that range, fan letters. And I've only had one hate mail. So, judging by that ratio, definitely um, inclusion is winning.
That's incredible. That is incredible. I am so happy to hear that. That gives me such hope for this industry and this community of gamers. Um, like I said, from my perspective, I'm terrified to go on open mic whenever I play a game because I know that my voice is effeminate. I know that it is. Like I am a cisgendered man, but I'm a cisgendered man that likes to play dress up, and I have a gay voice, and it's so from my perspective, I've always been afraid of other gamers. I am so glad to hear that you have had all of this support and this love, and only one troll in all of that. I think that's great. Ricky, what do you think about fans?
I feel in the fighting game community, the fans are so amazing and they're so loving and caring, and they're always so kind. I can say that I've probably only had maybe two negative run-ins with fans over the past like 25 years I've been competing and playing
Wow.
games. Yeah, they're so amazing. But there you have your bad apples online, and anonymity is like so powerful nowadays, and people just want to say anything. And it's like I'll get the occasional, oh, like, yeah, it's cool that you're trans and all, but you don't gotta like shove it down our throats. And it's like, I'm sorry that my transness is just as important as your cis het norm relationship. It's like it's because I feel like the reason why they get mad about stuff like that, I feel, is because it's still not mainstream, and it's not talked about enough. And I
Right.
feel the only way that we're gonna normalize these things is if we talk about it, and they feel like for some reason it's shoving it down their throat, but it's not. It's like we just need to be more open about these things till it gets to a point where, like Rebecca said, like where it's normalized and you don't have to ever worry about it. That's the only way we're gonna get there. But other than that, the fans are just so delightful and amazing, especially when you're at an event. And I try to stress to everybody who's scared to come to an event or to play at events because they're scared they're gonna get bullied like they do online. I always say the FGC in person is nothing like what you'll get online. The FGC online is toxic because it's a bunch of people who are anonymous and who are a bunch of little kids who want to talk a bunch of crap to you and say a bunch of negative things because they're hidden behind the camera. But if you go to an actual event, everyone is so loving and so kind and so supportive.
Oh, see, this is all so fantastic. I was not expecting these
Yeah.
answers, but you are all giving me such wonderful hope. I love it. Sheen, what do you think from your perspective?
I think so where my position, I kind of get a more uncensored version of the fans because I will see everything on YouTube. Like I said, I will see everything on Twitch. I will see everything on Twitter.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Ready for this?
I think what everybody has been saying is true. Like everybody you are interacting with face to face, they're going to be amazing to you because I feel like the overall community is super accepting. But what you see on Twitter, what you see on YouTube, it's going to be toxic because those fans do exist, but they're also the most vocal. So like
Mm-hmm.
I know that TSM has like a bunch of League fans. There are maybe like 20, 30 on Reddit that are always on the same post all the time, but there's like tens of thousands of people watching everything and being silent, and
Sure.
that runs a gamut of people. It's not just all those toxic people. It's going to be people that support the team no matter what. It's people that just got into the game, just started watching R6, just start watching Fortnite, and it differs by community too. So like Fortnite would have a different demographic. Some would argue more toxic. um, but same thing with FGC. Like you would say in person, I think I agree with Ricky. FGC is the most open, most accepting, most loving community. But online, my God, if you were introduced to FGC online, you would quit immediately. It is so
Immediately.
bad. Yeah, it's so, so bad. But yeah, you just kind of have to like have this perspective. Like the people that you see online are just the ones that are most vocal. It's 2% of the people that you will actually interact with online, or I mean, in real life and
Sure.
overall.
And generally, from my experience, those that are notable people online that have been toxic have been rooted out of most communities for
Mm.
in some way. Those that are like trying to be toxic without anonymity just don't last very long. Nobody wants to have toxic people in their environment.
That's good to know. We were talking in my chat on Twitch about being blacklisted from certain things. I was a performer for a little while, and I did musical theater, and there are certainly actors and singers and dancers that are pushed to the side. Like, you have done something wrong, and we don't want to work with you. And I feel like that's probably starting to spill over as well into other industries. And it sounds like, Stress, that you know in esports it's no different. Like, if you are not able to be a decent person, then you're just not going to be here.
And that's one way that the leagues, when we look at what people refer to as franchise leagues, so when we're looking at the Overwatch League, we're looking at
Mm-hmm.
the League of Legends Championship Series in America and the LEC in Europe, the rule sets for players are very stringent on what players can say, whether it's to another competitor or on social media. There is a heavily implied role model aspect of it. So players will be fined or suspended or worse for extreme toxic behavior.
Well, and
So
we saw that. We saw that in the over. I'm sorry to keep bringing you back to the Overwatch League, but we saw that with XQC and Muma. Um, um, for better or worse, we did see it. So yeah, I definitely understand your point there. All right, we've got about 10 minutes, and I promised our chat that we would do some Q's and A's. So in the next 10 minutes, I just kind of want to touch quickly on these, and we've got a lot of questions. I was very surprised. So I want to start. The first one is from member Gay Thanks Bye. Like Gay Thanks Bye, but Gay Thanks. He says, as gamers, what can we do to evolve the esports community to be more LGBTQIA plus friendly? So anyone can answer that question.
I think the easiest thing is call it out. You see somebody being toxic, call it out. It's not acceptable. You know it's not acceptable when you hear it, even if you like have a certain mindset, or
Mm-hmm.
like even if you're not fully supportive, you know it's wrong. So call it out. That's the
Speak
easiest way,
up.
really. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a saying, silence is acceptance.
Yes, silence is
Yes,
compliance. I've heard that.
I agree. You have to call it out. No matter a big streamer, a big name, small personality, you need to call it out. Even if your mods on your stream are doing a good job deleting comments, you still want to call the people out just to reinstill that saying negative things like that is not okay. Just in general, you should not be talking like that to anybody, and it's just not okay.
Sure.
yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and I think to look at things maybe to kind of turn it around as well. If you want to support people and you want to support like LGBTQ creators, watch their stuff, like their stuff, retweet their stuff, subscribe, post about it, share it, like however you can with with like the powers to you, support them too, because that is what feels great at the end of the day when you do get a nice message. Is unbelievably nice feeling.
I
Yeah.
I want to skip around a little bit. This question is from Opa Milk, who is one of our like, I don't know what to call it, saviors. He's fantastic. He runs literally everything, and he's one of the momagers here at Stream Queens, and he's doing literally the entire or the entire convention, and I think he's fantastic. But he has a question. He says, "How do you respond to situations where a gaming company or gaming league you love has an approach to LGBTQIA2 plus stances that are at odds with your own?"
I'm gonna jump on this one, but carefully because this one's a live grenade that I already jumped on once this year. I made a very public tweet when a partnership was signed for the League of Legends European Championship, um, partnering with a company that does completely against LGBTQ rights. When you have power and you can fight a battle, use that opportunity is what I would say. I certainly am not the reason that that partnership dissolved. There were more powerful people than me at play with that, but again, you have to, when you can fight that battle, fight it. Whether it's your own personal principles or whatever, use the power that you have to do it. Not every battle is going to be winnable, but I feel like it's probably better to feel like you fought than to let it pass by.
No, does that put you or any like esports professional, does that put their position in a little bit of jeopardy at that point?
Certainly, the European casters that were on the broadcast at the time said that they wouldn't do the show
Ooh, okay.
unless there was changes made. So certainly, there is a risk to doing that. But again, you know you got to take a stand for what you believe in, right?
Sure. Does anyone else have? Because I think that's a great question from Opa. I and it is one that I think we have to ask ourselves. Like, what is the line that we will not cross, and where do we say no? I will not take this paycheck from you if you don't change. So, does anyone else have a perspective on that? And it's fine if you don't. Like, I totally like. We have more questions.
I mean,
I
I
feel like
think,
James said it perfectly. For
yeah.
me personally, yeah, I just feel like I feel like there is no line that I won't cross. I feel like if something does not align with my views properly, would not want to work with something like that. Or if I saw that the organization um bring on a sponsor or something that is not LGBTQ friendly, or just like I said, align with what I'm liking, I'm going to be vocal about it, because I feel like it's my duty to be vocal about something that I don't agree with.
And in
Oh,
that sense, I feel like there's like different levels of how vocal you can be within an organization. So like your freelancers are not going to speak up because they're freelancers. They're not like a permanent part of the organization. They're in the most peril. But somebody who's an influencer, who's like making the top streams for your company, for your organization, they have more of a platform, so they are able to do that. But yeah, it does put jeopardy on your position, but it is still the right thing to call them out. Just know that like if somebody isn't doing it, it might be because they are scared of losing their security.
And to that point, sometimes from the outside it looks like people aren't doing things. When you're picking a battle, there's also picking how to fight that battle. Like in that instance, publicly was the best way for me to put support. But if it's internally, I'll go internal first. And I don't need to drag people through the mud to enact change. And that's a lot of people are fighting silent battles behind, you know, not just running to social media and post. So sometimes it can look like people aren't doing something, but you never have the full picture. And there are many, many people doing the right thing behind closed doors.
I think that's great. I mean, I totally agree with you. Perspe- perspective can certainly be reality in some sense, and I think we all have to understand that just because it doesn't look like someone's not trying to make change, or someone's not trying to say something, it doesn't mean that they're not. um, I think that's important to remember in any aspect, but especially in something like this where it's got a ton of moving parts in it, Deer has asked, the gaming community is becoming more inclusive every year, with games including queer and trans characters much more openly. Do you see the same level of progression from the people managing and running professional esports events? And we have 3 minutes, so I just want to keep your answers as brief as possible.
I want to speak on the kind of like the difference in terms of organization makeup between developers and esports organizations. Because when you look at game developers, I would say it's extremely inclusive. Like there's a whole bunch of people doing the right thing, making games that they love, and there are all types of tags and identities, right? When it comes to esports, since everything is more public facing, I feel like we're here, but we're a little bit more silent.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the ones making the games, and it kind of sucks that if I'm playing like Rainbow Six and it's just shoot, 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 shoot with my team, I can't really like force or like somehow slot in how I identify. Whereas like if I'm playing Nine in the Woods, which has maybe that's a bad example, but like if I was playing something that had queer characters in it, it's much easier to like just openly talk about it. So we kind of have to feed off of each other. Like game developers make more queer representation, and it's easier for esports and people who play the games to just kind of ride off of that inclusivity and naturally segue into how they identify and kind of support the community that way.
Fantastic. All right. I hate to cut everyone off. I think that's a fantastic question. Sheen, I think you said it great. I have less than a minute of the panel, so I want to just say thank you, everyone, Thank you for being here. You have all been head and shoulders my favorite part of this con. Don't tell Dear because I was on her panel last night, but um, but I'm sure that I'll get a message from her later because I know she's watching. But this has been fantastic. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you so much, every single one of you. If you guys want to get like a 10-second outro, say who you are, where we can find you, what projects you're working on, we'd love to hear it. Just real quick, 10-second stress.
Hey, I'm Stress. Yeah, you can find me behind the Mad Lions Twitter, any of the English ones, and also at StressCast on Twitter. Yeah, just working on keeping Mad Lions going and making sure they're inclusive.
Fantastic. Rebecca?
I'm Burger Becky on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and I'm currently working on brand new video games at Old School, OLDESKUUL.com.
Fantastic. Ricky?
Hi, I'm Hello Kitty Ricky. Thank you guys for having me. You can find me at Hello Kitty Ricky on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. And I just did an amazing project with Absolute Vodka about inclusivity and just love and about togetherness, even though we're in a pandemic right now. So you guys can check it out on Absolute's website.
Cheers! What about you, Sheen?
Hi, I'm Sheen. I go by Bagel actually online, so if you want to find me, I'm Big Ghoul in Twitch chat. On Twitter, I'm Bagel Esquire. I'll post it on in the chat right now. But I work in TSM content, so if you like TSM or just silly content in general, TSM YouTube is the place to go. We're currently doing a campaign on a character called the Grubhub Gamer. It's all extremely silly, stupid things. It's very fun. And on Wednesday, we have a live stream, Ulog live stream coming up, so be sure to tune into the TSM Twitch.
I love it. Okay, well, listen, thank you all so much for being here. I know we're about a minute over, so I want to just real quick, thank you all. I really appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of Stream Queens Con. We will be right back with some more great entertainment, and I cannot wait to see you here in the chat. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Wave goodbye. Bye.